Whoa, those fireworks scared me. Must be some kind of celebration. Whoa, that is, listen to this. Party atmosphere. It's like New Year's Eve in Vegas, except it's the celebration of InGoal Radio, the podcast. This is outstanding. The 200th episode, InGoal Radio, the podcast, presented by the Hockey Shop, source for sports, Langley, thehockeyshop.com. Congratulations, gentlemen, David and Kevin.
And Darren.
And Darren, absolutely. Been there since episode 1 altogether.
We don't make it without you, buddy.
Happy New Year, happy birthday. What is it? Happy episode?
Happy epi.
Happy epi. There you go.
Happy epi. Kind of rhymes, doesn't it? No, seriously, 200 episodes. It's extraordinary, that number. It's actually even cooler when you go back to how long ago in real time this thing started and how long it's been going.
Yeah, I'm not so good at the math, but that's basically almost 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
52 a year, eh? Wow. You guys are still putting up with me 4 years later. That's unbelievable.
If I had known then what I know now, I would have said lobbied to have the podcast named One More Question. But InGoal Radio, the podcast, is pretty good.
I was going to say, if you had known then what you know now, you would have politely turned down our phone call when we came a call and asking if you wanted to be involved.
I remember that conversation with David. I was at a soccer field in PEI.
I was at a baseball field.
There we go. So it was cool. And Woody was off doing Woody things.
Hutch wisely left me out of that conversation because he wanted the answer to actually be yes.
Darren didn't have enough time. The game would have been over if you'd been there.
Episode 200 is going to feature the same guest from episode 1 as we retrace our roots. Roberto Luongo is going to be on the program. Our milestone episode. So you've got Luongo at 1. Number 100, Woody?
Francois Allaire. So we got some tie-ins between 100, and 200.
Incredible. And by 300, the names that we're seeing on the scene right now and starting to dominate, I don't even want to guess who could be in that range because we've got a bit of changeover in the National Hockey League and the top of the mountain from the goaltending.
Well, I think Roberto was perfect for this one because he just got inducted to the Hall of Fame when we did the interview. Right. I think we can probably find another reason to bring him back because it's pretty special to have him. I don't know if people realize this. He mentions, I wasn't aware of this. He had mentioned to me in the past that he just doesn't do podcasts. But as you'll hear him say, he literally doesn't do podcasts. He has done one twice, and that's us. So pretty honored to have him make that exception for us. And I think it's a perfect way to celebrate. He kicked us off in the car. We upgraded the studio and did it at a rink this time as opposed to in my car. But I'm pretty honored to have him back for episode 200. Didn't realize just how special that was until he says, as you'll hear at the beginning of the interview, that he doesn't do these. So we consider ourselves lucky that he made an exception.
For the few that have not been along for the ride from episode 1, Roberto Luongo did the opening interview for InGoal Radio, the podcast, inside Woodley's car as they drove around Vancouver, which is really cool.
We're not the only one we've done that way.
Nope.
Freddie Anderson, I think we had in the car. Ian Clark, we had in the car. Sometimes you just got to give people rides and pull out a microphone and say, hey, by the way, the cost of this ride is an interview.
And we've done
Darren did
various
it once too.
Yeah, I believe we've all done different episodes from our vehicles.
I've done one from the vehicle, but I haven't had a guest in the vehicle. But you have, Darren.
Yes, you're right.
That was
from the National Hockey League goalie department, Kay Whitmore.
There you go.
He and I did one outside the Buttonville Airport in Toronto, just north of Toronto.
Sort of sounds like you're picking him up with an illicit shipment of gear to be measured or something.
Well, I think he lived north of Toronto and he was on his way downtown. I live in Markham, so it was on his way into work, and he just popped in and we recorded. I forgot that Whit and I had recorded that interview from the vehicle.
You know what? And I think it's a good reminder. Like, not only was Kay an awesome interview in that one, but amidst all the conversations that we're hearing around the league about why offense is up, and there's a lot of different reasons. But I think sometimes people miss that. Like, I think the gear trim the sizing charts, the chest protectors. It's been effective. I think it gets overlooked too often in these discussions. Some of the work that Kay's done of just sort of trimming down goalies, as much as maybe goalies didn't love it, I think fairly and safely. And I think it plays a role. Like, even some of the little tweaks that were made in 05 that made it harder to get to the ice or harder to seal the ice, like getting rid of some of the pillows and some of those things under the caps. Like, I think, so sometimes I think people forget just how big a role that Witt played in all that.
Yeah, and he is a busy guy. It just isn't in the weeks leading up to training camp. There's a bit of a lull after that, but then guys start ordering their middle of the season gear and the different reverse retro sets or the third jersey sets. It's almost, I know he does a lot of viewing in the hockey operations department in the situation room as well in taking in games, but the gear cycle through that office never really stops now.
No, it's constant. It's constant.
4 years ago, we got a lot of different gear coming through. Henrik Lundqvist was still part of the National Hockey League. We were talking about the fast rebounds going out. That is now standard. There's a few different advancements that we witnessed in the gear, which is all available over at the Hockey Shop, source for Sports Langley, thehockeyshop.com.
Yeah, and speaking of special gear ordered for special events that require Kay's permission, how about Linus Ullmark with the custom setup he had for the Winter Classic at Fenway? We can get to that in a minute. But Jeremy Swayman wearing the tan sort of leather retro look True PX3, which will be on its way and arriving soon at the Hockey Shop and thehockeyshop.com. So we've talked about the sales. We had the Boxing Day sale sort of blowing out all the old to make space on the shelves. And boy, there is a ton of shelving at the new location of the Hockey Shop, but make space for the new gear. We saw the 20.2 from True come in with our gear segment last week, the offshore model. PX3, just like Jeremy Swayman's, will be here soon, should be arriving any day at the Hockey Shop. We'll do a review of it. We'll do an overview. I teased it last week, sort of the role that Freddie Anderson played in the development of that line and some of the changes in the thigh rise. And that's kind of why we love the Hockey Shop. They're always on top of the new stuff that's coming in. We had that Warrior Ritual M2i stick that came in a couple of weeks ago on the show. We'll keep refreshing you with all the latest stuff. There'll still be stuff on sale as that Boxing Week sale sort of carries over on some of past models that you can still get on a discount. But like, this is the exciting time as we get into January, February, March. All the new gear starts showing up, and there's no better place to find it and find out about it. Whether it works for you, whether it's going to suit your game, whether you just want it because it's nice and new and everybody wants the latest. The staff at the Hockey Shop will be able to answer your questions about all the new lines and some of the discounts you can find on the old lines. Make sure you check them out at thehockeyshop.com.
Well said. Let's get to a few different items before we bring in Roberto Luongo, who's waiting patiently right now in episode 200. He's been through this a couple of times, so he knows the drill. The World Junior Hockey Championship wrapping up with Team Canada with a big win over Czechia. And Hutch, there's an in-goal connection to the gold medal game.
Yeah, there sure is, Darren. The two starting goaltenders in the gold medal game, Thomas Milic and Thomas Suchanek, were both in-goal premium members. I actually just wanted to check in to see that we could get in touch with Thomas Milic, should he turn out to be the winner, because we've had several of the last 3 Canadian goaltenders from the World Juniors have come on here on the podcast. So I thought, let's just see if Thomas is on the list here. I'm pretty sure I'd seen his name before, and yeah, sure enough. And then gave another check, and Thomas Suchanek's been with us for I think 3 years at least now too, as a member. So just awesome to see these guys using InGoal as a way of learning the game themselves, even at the highest levels, and pretty proud, honestly, to see them out there.
Well, and they're in the gold medal game. What did we hear a lot about, sort of during the early rounds? There was a lot of discussion about Canadian goaltending and development, and some of it was a little overdone. Probably some of it was because Milic hadn't gotten into the net yet. But one of the things I heard a lot about these two goaltenders was how well they read the game. And how well they process, and how maybe that there's times where in the goaltending development in North America, that's one of the things that's lacked. I've heard that on radio conversations over the past couple of weeks. And yeah, so I don't think it's a coincidence that both the guys that are in the gold medal game, and I'm probably making some assumptions here, but what the hell? They probably check out pro reads, right? It's one of those features we've heard from NHL goalie coaches. We've heard from NHL goalies. Like, that is the best way to learn how to read the game, short of experiencing it yourself, is to sort of process it through the eyes of an NHL goalie. And we've got talking about episode 200. I think we're well over 150 of those up. Last couple
Definitely.
featuring Thatcher Demko and some great insights from him. So congratulations to those two guys. Excited to have them a part of the InGoal family. And, if I'm not saying that if you get a subscription to InGoal magazine, you're automatically going to make the World Junior Championship gold medal game, but I'm also not saying it. Not saying it. Not saying it. That's right.
Milic impressed me, one, with his battle ability, scrambling when things do get a little chaotic in the defensive zone, and the mental strength of Milic. There's at times during this tournament where things were going against them, and he managed to lock it down. And no better example of that than the gold medal game, when they allowed a couple of goals late and are able to win it in overtime. The Slovakia game, the save that he makes in that in overtime, he turned some heads for a guy that has gone through the draft.
Yeah, for sure. And don't forget going down by a couple goals against the United States as well, and then locking it down. So great performance. I think the thing that stood out for me is probably the piece that wouldn't stand out for a lot of people, and just how easy he made some difficult situations look. I'm thinking about just a simple overlap on a shot coming off the rush. He controls a shot right into the shoulder. How many other goaltenders probably drop into RVH there, can't control the rebound, turns into a big scramble. He just reads things really well and makes the simple, controlled play. And then, as you said, Darren, he's got that ability to scramble when he needs to. Made a couple of spectacular saves. How about the one coming across basically in the full splits and then lifts a leg about 1.5 feet off the ice? And is it not? And Woody's holding up his glove. That was later on. There was one fully with his leg coming across, and he lifted it up and made the save. That's not the gold medal game. Yeah, the glove save in the gold medal game. There was a scorpion save in there at one point as well in a scramble. Just that ability to stay aware and to stay balanced in an urgent situation, because that's another thing we see. A lot of guys can make that acrobatic move where they come sliding across in the splits, but it's an all-out, hope it hits me, I got nothing after that, whereas Milic is able to remain balanced, to even move while in motion. I think supreme skill there, and just a real pleasure to watch both of them play.
And if we're looking for reasons why he didn't get drafted the first two times through, I think everybody knows what it is, right? He's just over 6 feet tall. There are multiple teams in the National Hockey League that, basically won't even consider. And in some cases, I've been told not even allow their scouts to submit reports on guys who are under 6'2". And so Thomas Milic wins a gold medal at the World Junior Championships. And the same night, exhibit A for why that's not a good way to operate, turns in 64 saves in a 5-3 win. UC Saros, the goaltender that everyone who's not 6'4" loves to cheer for and watch and point to. So it's amazing to me that Saros can be a Vezina finalist, have performances like that, try and single-handedly drag the Nashville Predators into the playoffs this year, and we still have that prejudice to the point where a guy like Milic goes through. I don't think he'll get through 3 times. Somebody's going to pick him, but I'll be curious. Meanwhile, Dustin Wolf continues to absolutely dominate the American Hockey League as another undersized goalie who almost didn't get drafted himself. One of the last picks by the Calgary Flames. I covered that draft here in Vancouver, despite also dominating in the Western Hockey League. So, I've seen a little bit of give on this. We've always had the conversation that, maybe there is an ideal size if it's 6'2", 6'3", but on either side of that, whether you're smaller or bigger, you have to overcome things. The little guys just don't even get a chance, and the big guys will get chance after chance after chance. And I think it's time for that to maybe not change entirely, because I get the philosophy, but I hope that pendulum starts to swing the other way.
And then you've got Saros jumping on the All-Star game announcement, making those 64 saves minutes after being named to another National Hockey League All-Star weekend, along with Igor Shesterkin, which you would expect from the New York Rangers. Linus Ullmark is having a season for the ages from the Boston Bruins. And Logan Thompson, the 8th rookie goaltender named to a National Hockey League All-Star game. Pelle Lindbergh did it. Grant Fuhr did it. Don Beaupre was the first in 1980. That's as far back as they go. And Sean Burke, who is Logan Thompson's goalie coach in 1989.
Nice pull, Darren. I like
Darren, the goalie historian.
Well, I did a little research for my own broadcast with the Vegas Golden Knights last night.
You don't have to admit that.
You're just a goalie savant. That's don't admit you looked it up. It's just top of your head brilliance. But great. I mean, those are great names, obviously. And I feel good about it because didn't I name Logan, like when we were talking about long shots and Vezina trophies, like Logan Thompson is a really good goalie. He posted some adjusted numbers last year that were really impressive. And for the most part this year, he stayed at that level. So seasons, but like the one that Ullmark is having is probably going to keep everybody away from a Vezina trophy. But, you know, Logan Thompson's been a really good story. It's been a really good goalie for Vegas. And it's nice to see him get that recognition with the All-Star nod.
Halfway through this year, he's got as many wins as he had starts in the National Hockey League coming into the campaign. So he's done a good job there. Logan Thompson going to the NHL All-Star weekend. The last rookie, you guys, was John Gibson in 2016. The last rookie named to the NHL All-Star game. I want to also ask you about Jack Campbell and switching gear in the middle of the season.
Am I surprised that he switched? Not at all.
Okay.
Am I surprised
Why?
he switched in the middle of the season? Maybe.
Okay.
Because this was coming. Because this was a conversation that I'm pretty sure they had with him shortly after signing him, if not before. And if they didn't have the conversation, there was certain unawareness from the Edmonton side that the gear that he was wearing with Toronto and dating back to his time with the LA Kings was costing him goals. Like flat out costing him goals. Pucks sneaking through the 5-hole. You know, obviously he was wearing a very soft Vaughn product, you know, a la Jonathan Quick. Like you could basically grab his pads and fold them up like an accordion. They were so soft. And so small thigh rise, soft thigh rise, somewhat narrowish butterfly at times. There were just too many pucks that got through there. When I went through his season with Toronto from a pre-scout project for NHL.com last year, like I quickly found 7 goals that, you know, are going in just because those pads are so short and so soft at the top of the thigh rise. So not surprised by that because I knew it's an issue that Edmonton was aware of and wanted to change. That it was Brian's he changed to is also probably not a shock because who else changed to Brian's in the offseason? Carter Hart. Who'd he skate with in the summer? Dustin Schwartz. Who's Jack Campbell's goalie coach in Edmonton? Dustin Schwartz. I think Brian's, and interestingly enough, you know, we saw this with Robin Lehner in Vegas a couple times where it actually hit the thigh rise and a little bit of a trap door. The thigh rise was soft enough that the puck would actually knock it backwards. But I think for Jack, that allows him to have a taller pad, stiffer than what he had, thinner, so it's that taller thigh rise isn't going to interfere with each other when he drops or when he moves. But certainly a stiffer profile than what he had in the Vaughn, a taller profile. I've had a lot of people talk about how he looks bigger. I am a little surprised though on the chest protector. Not just because I wasn't aware that was part of those conversations, but because to me that's almost a bigger change. That's almost a bigger change. You could still make that Brian's pad soft and flexible and feel similar. You know, maybe not to the degree of the Vaughn, but feel like a soft, flexible pad. I mean, it's their more flexible option of the two lines. But chest protector is personal. Chest protector is a feel thing. That's I think guys struggle to change that. I mean, maybe I'm off on this, but like you see guys that are wearing chest protectors that was one of the biggest issues with the rules when Kay brought them in was guys just wanted what they'd been in. So in some cases, guys that were in ones that you know weren't big at all, didn't have a massive profile, just were pissed that they had to change out of them because they were so comfortable in them. And to them, that was such a big change in terms of just the feel it gave them on the ice.
Hutch, you agree with that? Are you surprised at that?
I'm still trying to process it because on the one hand, my initial reaction to that is I think Woody's crazy. Switching a chest protector shouldn't be all that hard. And then I think back to some of the conversations he's had over the years with guys, and it starts to make sense. I mean, I remember Woody sending me a photo from the locker room having sat down with Martin Brodeur. And how old was that chesty that he was wearing?
Oh, wait. Yeah, we got to dig that one up. We had that article on the old site. Like,
yeah, exactly.
That thing was
so long ago.
And the only reason he changed is because, like, it got to the point where the padding wasn't protecting him enough and he was starting to get injured.
Yeah, and I think we all have that. I don't even know how to describe it, but just our perception of what our upper body is doing seems a little bit more refined, a little bit more precise than what we all do with our legs. And so maybe, yeah, from a feel perspective, I guess, as I think about it, Darren, it does make a lot of sense.
I've had goalies say that outside of skates, it's the most personal item.
Yeah. But
it's comfortable. Like if you find one that fits and works, it's a comfort factor, and that is a big thing with probably more your arms than the chest. But I'm sure that there's a little bit in it. But I get the comfort factor and wanting to feel good. But
But it highlights a guy searching for solutions right now, isn't it? If you're willing to make that change mid-season, you're really got your head twisted.
And what was the switch? Was it the same manufacturing?
No, he switched from Vaughn to Brian's pads, gloves, and I haven't even checked to see what the switch is on the chest protector. My apologies. Okay. I should have sent a quick text before we did this, but I just know it's a much bigger profile. I guess would be it's either a Brian's, which I just saw Alexander Georgiev in here with, or the most popular by far from what I've seen being in the rooms, the most common chest protector in the National Hockey League, and it's because of how it sits and how it looks and how big it profiles, is the CCM NHL legal version, which you can't get at retail, but that's the one I see the most out there. But like, here's the other thing about Jack, and this is why maybe I was a little surprised, especially mid-season. Probably the only reason this change wasn't made before the season is because of a sensitivity to the fact that Jack really identifies him, like his identity as a goaltender is in some ways tied to that soft Vaughn style pad that he switched back to after he was traded to the Los Angeles Kings. So one of the first things that goalie coach Dusty Emu did was get him back in Vaughn's. When he was in Dallas, they switched him, and I don't know the full, I haven't talked to both sides of this equation, but in his mind, he was switched and pushed into a switch to, at the time, a Reebok pad, a very stiff butterfly, doesn't move with your leg, moves around your leg, like a Reebok Premier style pad. And I think he felt like by the time he got to LA, like he felt like he lost part of his identity as a goalie who moved and the equipment moved with him rather than around his leg. As an athletic goalie, like there's a mindset, this is what I am as a goalie that ties to your equipment at times. And in his case, he felt like he lost himself as a goalie when he was forced to switch into a stiffer, more just sort of wear it loose, can't tighten it up super tight, rotates around your leg style pad. And he felt like he got back to being him when he got into the Vaughns again, like Jonathan Quick was wearing in Los Angeles. So that's why this was not an easy change to make, because I think his identity as a goaltender was largely tied and the success he had in that Vaughn gear. But I like I said, it was just costing him too many goals. And this isn't even please don't take this as a knock on Vaughn. It's really not. It really isn't. And hey, listen, they owe us money, so I've happily knocked them before. But I'm not knocking them here. This is a choice to this isn't even a style of pad that he was wearing that, the way he had it set up that was really even commonly available. It was so soft and flexible. They probably could have made him a pad that would have performed similarly, stiffer and taller and things like that, but it just wasn't how he identified himself.
The Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, as well as Source for Sports Surrey. It's all under the same umbrella, and they make it happen when you want equipment that fits your style, or if you're looking at change and switching it up like Jack Campbell has done. And I'm sure that this has been a process throughout the season. I haven't seen the Oilers practice firsthand, but I'm anticipating that the answer would be that he's been merging this in.
I can't remember the date, but it was certainly before Christmas, so we're at least 2 weeks of him sort of sampling this. We heard through another manufacturer actually that the Bryans had been in the room. I want to say that was early December. We had that meeting. Talking to the reps from other companies, we knew that he was looking at other gear and that there was Bryans equipment in the locker room in Edmonton. But as like you, Darren, we're not there every day to see how many times he snuck out to test it out before a skate or before a practice to sort of get comfortable with it.
Hutch, if you don't mind, go checking on Lou and make sure that everything is okay in the green room, that he's got the refreshments and the snacks are all caught up to date. And Woody, let's send you out to the Hockey Shop, source for sports Surrey, at thehockeyshop.com, because you get that new gear and you want to keep it looking new. And there's a product that helps with that.
Well, and, speaking of switching gear, this segment very much ties into not a gear switch, but a how to keep your gear clean switch. We were reminded of the puck out gear, the puck out sort of product, which is like a solution that you dip onto, it's a little puck shaped brush on one side and almost like what's the magic eraser? Mr. Clean Magic Eraser on the other to basically keep your pads clean. And we've actually profiled this stuff before, but the reason it became current is because there was a goaltender here locally that really liked to keep his pads clean, but he was doing it in a very unique style, and that was Spencer Martin. He was rubbing Vaseline on his pads before every game. And a lot of people will hear that and go, what the? He actually got it from Pavel Francouz, he said. It was something that Pavel used to do in Colorado. And so why would you rub Vaseline on your pads? There is no performance benefit. As a matter of fact, Spencer told me that he actually stopped doing it on his blocker because he realized pucks were sliding and not steering as much as he would like. He initially experimented with his glove, but that was obviously a disaster because the pucks wouldn't stay in there like they should. There's no performance benefit. You cannot get it on the inside edge or the pad won't slide as well. This is strictly about when pucks hit the pad and left a mark, the mark was on the Vaseline and not all the way down to the pad. So you simply wiped it off and you had fresh white pads. And a lot of people are probably hearing this and going, that's crazy. Jake Allen said, that's psychopath stuff when I presented it to him when Montreal came through town. But of course, Jake actually had to go to a car automotive paint shop to have his original true black skates painted white and black. So who's the psychopath now,
who's
Jake?
the psycho?
But hey, the point being, Yaroslav Halak, practice pads, cleans his pads before every game, has throughout his career. Some guys just want to look fresh. And so, but the Vaseline, it was becoming a story. Matter of fact, I wrote about it. It was becoming a lot of work. He'd been through 2 giant tubs already this season. So I gave him an alternative. I brought him some puck out. And now let's go to the hockey shop and Cam can explain to you what it is and how it works. Because I'm telling you, it's worked for Spencer Martin. Welcome back to the Hockey Shop, source for sports. We're over here in the goalie corner, Goalie Utopia, as I'm still calling it, at the all-new location out in Langley, 34,000 square feet plus of hockey awesomeness, including Cam's Little World here in the goalie section, where we tend to focus on, big items, the pads, the gloves, the chest protectors, the sticks, the masks. But today we've got a unique one.
Pro-inspired.
Yes.
Puck out.
Now,
Excuse me?
what? Puck out. Get the puck out of your pads. In other words, if you are a goaltender who likes a clean look, and hey, some guys like that sign that me, it takes me months to get black marks on my pads because I never make any saves. So I want them there.
Self-deprivation aside, also we're talking about when you're selling your gear.
Self what?
Self-deprivation.
Deprecation. I'm not depriving myself. That's staying on the reel, folks, because he did it to himself. I know I'm not allowed to mock him, but he did it to himself. That's staying in the show. Okay.
Get the puck out of here.
Try and regroup here, Cam. You're right, because when you're selling your pads, you need to clean them up. This is the material you want to use. So before I tease the pro validation that we had just this week from a pro that I introduced this to, tell us how it works. Tell us what it's for. Seems pretty simple. It's just going to take the puck marks off your pads, your blocker, your glove. I know we've used it on Bauer products. Mm-hmm. We had a set of Bream 2S Pros that had like 300 games in it through the testing process. Put this on, wiped it off, like 30 seconds, the blocker was clean.
Is there anything you need to worry about? Maybe say in a more traditional Gen Pro pad, you have to worry about colors and not wiping
Screen
it
print
off.
logos.
Screen print logo.
So any of your any logo that's screen printed on the side, so a logo that's not embroidered or anything like that. I'd cite maybe say a Vaughn logo on the side of a Vaughn pad on the outer roll. Something like that. If you're sitting there rubbing on it, you are going to
you got to work at it.
Yeah, but you could take that logo off. So you do got to be a little bit careful with it. Other than that, again, you're getting that sponge, that scrub brush, and then you're also getting their patented puck out juice.
Puck out juice.
Puck out juice.
Is that the technical name?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's a really good term for it, but
listen, I know some of you are like, why do I want to take the pucks out? But the reality is there are guys in the National Hockey League look good, feel good, play good.
story time.
Story time. So they want their pads to be white. Yaroslav Halak cleans his pads before every game. Not using this, he's got a different mix he uses, but maybe I needed to introduce this to him last year when he was here in Vancouver. Because there's another goalie in Vancouver right now that is using this. Spencer Martin, don't know if you saw the story. If you haven't yet, make sure you check it out at ingoalmag.com, was actually rubbing Vaseline on the face of his pads before every game. That's right, Vaseline. And before you tell me he's crazy, as maybe Jake Allen might have later that week, he actually got it from Pavel Francouz. So he's not the only one that was doing this. The concept is quite simple. It's not about performance. As a matter of fact, he learned some hard lessons about not using it on the glove because pucks would skip out. He stopped using it on the blocker because pucks were skipping off it and not getting a good grip and steering it better. But he was using it on the pads right down to the end before we introduced him to puck out because the puck marks would hit the pad with the Vaseline and it wouldn't stick on the pad. It would actually sort of stick on the Vaseline. So he could just wipe it off and have that clean look he desired. Obviously, you're going to take a little heat when you're rubbing Vaseline on your pads every day. It's also a lot of work. So
I can also imagine.
So the solution, puck out. Tried it the other day, got a text message from him an hour before game time. Works like a charm. If you need to clean up pads to sell them, if you need to clean up pads just because you want to look like Spencer Martin and Yaroslav Halak, fresh and clean and crisp, reach out to Cam. He's got a bunch in stock. He's ordering more because he knows this is going to be a big hit, this video. Where can they get you?
604-589-8299 or 1-800-567-7790. I feel like you should have memorized a number on that one. You did it. That was you. That was all you.
This is all you
Pro
got to do.
validation today. Look at that.
Pro validation, puck out. If you need it, if you want your pads cleaned again, whether it's for personal use, we're not judging, or to sell a set of pads, make sure you hit them up, thehockeyshop.com. This ships across the border, no problem. They've got plenty in stock. Check it out, and your pads will be clean. No need for self-deprivation.
I use it. I've used it for years. I love the product. I think it's got some real benefits to freshen things up on gear that you've had for a number of years, or just to keep it clean if it's brand new, and you can keep up to date with that brand new out of the box look.
Well, and you know what it really works well on is Bauer gear. As long as you don't rub too hard, you can't rub through if you got digital printing on there, you got to be a little careful. Can't rub through the layer on top of the digital printing. Works really well on Bauer gear. As a matter of fact, that was the sample I took to Spencer. I had a bottle there, and I had it still in my garage, a half bottle, and I had a Bauer blocker. We got a Bauer 2S Supreme line that has well over 300 skates in it. And actually, interestingly enough, it's funny because the old knock on Bauer used to be durability. These pads are still going. And so they're in the InGoal garage. We got them back from the junior goalie that had them last, and the blocker was black. And so I just took a dot and I rubbed sort of the front edge of the blocker with this stuff, and it looked like it was brand new. And so that's what I showed Spencer when I took him the remnants of that bottle. I said, hey, you want to try this? And he did, and then we got him some more bottles, of course, from the hockey shop. Where else would you get your puck out? There is a caveat that Cam threw in there about logos. So, for example, including the Bauer logos, the color logos on the side, along the pad, or also on the blocker. And I got to say, Spencer did some experimenting and maybe didn't heed my warning about the logo. So make sure you heed Cam's. First time he wiped it, the blue Bauer logo basically smeared all over the face of the blocker. And there may have been a moment of panic there. And this is, you know what? He texted me. And the panic wasn't that he'd ruined the blocker, because it was an old blocker. He's got 3 or 4 of them. It wasn't the one he was using in the game. The panic was he was worried that equipment staff would be upset by it and that they would blame me for bringing this product into the locker.
He had your back.
He had my back. He was worried about me, which, like, I love this kid, by the way. Also think he's a heck of a goalie. And, like, that's what he was thinking. So the good news is, yes, he smeared it all over the blocker. Yes, a little bit of the color came off, but it was an old blocker. But also then he took the product and traced around where it had smeared, and all the color came off, and the blocker looked normal, except he'd lost a little bit of the color on the Bauer label. So be careful, folks. Don't rub it over the labels, over the raised labels, over printed graphics. You can wipe them right off. Spencer learned the hard way. Unfortunately for him, he's in the NHL, and he had a couple extra blockers kicking around.
Hutch is back from the green room. How's Lou?
Lou's great. Woody, is that specific to the logo then? And like, if you've got the custom printed graphics on your Bauer pads, are they in danger?
No, they're not in danger. What you do have to be careful. Someone told me this, because there's a layer over top of those graphics, like a clear layer. If you scrub really, really hard, and the weird thing to me is you really shouldn't have to take it out. Like, it just wipes right off a Bauer pad. But if you were to scrub through that initial layer and get into the printed graphic, there's where you'd be in trouble. The other thing, you gotta be careful on Colored Gen Pro. I don't know, Darren, if you've got Colored Gen Pro on your pads. I was trying to think. You gotta be careful on Colored Gen Pro not to wipe too hard as well. You can smear some of the colors on an old traditional style pad.
I haven't had any issues. I do have Colored Gen Pro, so far, but I'm not exactly the mightiest of scrubber, so that may work to my advantage in this case. And before you go grab Lou for your interview with Roberto Luongo on this 200th episode of InGoal Radio, the podcast, give us a little Cole's Notes version of what you guys talk about.
That's a good question. It was a few weeks ago.
A long time ago.
We kind of go over a little bit of everything. Obviously, congratulate him on the Hall of Fame nod, what that experience was like, a little bit of a reflection on the career. But then we get into what's going on around the league right now, like what he's seeing. Don't forget, he's a special assistant to the general manager in Florida. He runs the goaltending excellence department for the Florida Panthers, still very much involved on a day-to-day basis with the game, with the position. And so we just ran some questions by what he's seeing, like the way offense is being created, the keys to goaltending, just kind of a little bit of what was it like to go into the Hall of Fame, and then right into sort of the modern era of the game. I think if anybody wants to sort of catch up on his roots in the game and history with the game, definitely go back and check out our first episode with him, because we got into a lot of those details in the initial Roberto Luongo interview 200 episodes ago. Crazy.
Awesome. Off you go. Yeah, you and Lou. We'll get to you in just a second as we get to our feature interview presented by Sense Arena VR, our great friends.
Awesome time to get into Sense Arena, guys, because the NHL shooters are there. Darren, not a big deal to you, but to Woody and I, it's a big deal to get to face NHL shooters. I asked my son, Matty, to check it out and give me his feedback on it. And he said, wow, big step up. Pro shooters have been in there for a long time. Euro pros were there doing some of the video drills where they sync the virtual puck to what's happening in a video situation so that you feel like you're facing a real life shooter in Sense Arena. But he said the NHL guys are a big step up. So if you've ever dreamt of what it might feel like to face an NHL shooter, now's your chance. Go grab Sense Arena. They've got some great new deals, guys. If you already have the Oculus headset, then you can go try it for 7 days with no commitment. If you want to try sort of a lower version without those video drills, unfortunately, without the NHL shooters, they've got a cheaper option now as well. I think only $29 a month. Again, need to have that headset first, but just some great chances to get into Sense Arena now. And it's an incredible training tool. And I'll just give you a little example of how it can be useful. I was at a game last night, and my son might have given up a goal he wasn't super happy about in the game, picks up Sense Arena this morning, finds a drill that replicates the situation he faced last night, and he repped it out this morning just to go over what had happened last night and see if he can find a way to make that save next time he's there. So there's something Sense Arena can do for you in the comfort of your own home. You don't need to have ice. You don't need to wait for the next practice. You can have it fresh on your mind. And there's a good chance you're going to be able to do something to work on a particular skill that you want to face it's a tool unlike any other guys, and we're really proud of the fact that they've been with us for a long time. Maybe not 200 episodes, but a big chunk of those feature interviews over the years have been presented by Sense Arena, and we want to thank them for being along for the journey, guys, and look forward to another 100 together.
I just love that you encounter a situation on the ice, you can get specific to that off the ice with Sense Arena. What an ability to be able to double down on your practicing without the need to get geared up and get ice and get players doing exactly what you need and explain everything going through it. Wow, that's an awesome commentary.
An unbelievable tool, and one of the things I love about it, guys, is just the fact that they're constantly developing it. And so each of these new releases comes up with something more exciting. I know one of the plans for the future is for teams to actually be able to put video into the system, and then it can replicate the plays. If you want to be able to like pre-scout power plays, for example, Darren, the kind of situation we're talking about here, maybe they wouldn't have had a drill for an exact situation, but there's going to be a time down the road, not too long, when they'll be able to actually input video from a game and replicate the situation. So that's a ways down the road, but again, improvements being made all the time, and what was always a great tool just gets better every time they have a new release.
Evolution, so important in sports with professional athletes, and we're seeing that on an ongoing basis as players move on from the likes of the World Junior Championship into their professional careers. And we witnessed it from his junior days and back-to-back Memorial Cups and World Junior Championship with Roberto Luongo to being a historic draft choice, and then into a Hall of Fame career in the NHL. And now on the management side, it's Roberto Luongo again on InGoal Radio, the podcast, celebrating our 200th episode with Kevin Woodley.
Super excited to welcome back to the InGoal Radio podcast for the second time, and the first time was the first ever. And now we're kicking it on episode 200. So we survived, Lou. Roberto Luongo. We're in Rogers Arena now, so it's a little nicer than Kevin's car.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Congratulations, first off, on the Hockey Hall of Fame. What an incredible honor. The last time we had you on, we reminisced career highlights, things like that. Getting a chance, now that you're retired and looking back on it, have you had a chance to sort of reminisce and think about the impact you had on the game and your career, and what comes to mind first when you go into the Hall of Fame?
Oh, first of all, thank you, and congratulations to you on the 200th podcast. I'll have you know that not only do I not do podcasts, I'm a strict no podcast guy. You're the only person that's ever been on. I've been on twice, so congratulations. That's an accomplishment on its own.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm honored.
So it's been a crazy past few weeks. Been fun. A lot of reminiscing and going over sometimes, not only in my professional career, but as a child and growing up. And so it's been fun, going down memory lane quite a bit, and feels a little bit more real than it does now than it did about 6 months ago.
Do you have a sense? Did it leave you with the sense? And I'm imagining you would have it to a large degree anyways without the Hall of Fame, but just how much you meant to both communities, Florida and here in Vancouver. Now going into the Ring of Honor is here as well. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, obviously when I'm in Vancouver, I see, the people and the love they have, and, the relationship we have is great. And so I when I'm here, I feel it right away, back home, it's a little bit different, but it's great in a different sense of when I do see people that recognize me and they come up to me, they're always not only grateful but for what I did on the ice, but also I think off the ice, especially with, the shooting, all that kind of stuff. So it's a different vibe, but at the same time, both are they're really nice.
What about goalies? Do you like now in your capacity, if you're around the Panthers, when you see teams like I know goalies that cite you as the guy, now they're getting into the league. You were the guy they grew up wanting to be. I think of Jeremy Swayman wears number one because of Roberto Luongo. And that's a dying thing, by the way, not as many number ones. Like, do you have a sense of the impact you had on inspiring maybe some people to play the position as well?
Oh yeah, a little bit. It's funny, the NHL put out a video, I think it was maybe a week or two before my induction. and there was a bunch of goalies talking about me and stuff. And one of them was Vasi, and he said he had a big poster of
I
me
saw
on
that.
his wall. I was kind of taken back, because you look at Vasi as the best goalie in the world, and when you think that you were somebody they looked up to, it's kind of feels a little bit surreal.
You are now, or you were, the sort of, you had Grant Fuhr, you were other people's Grant Fuhr. That's gotta be kind of a cool feeling. Like, I don't know if it's something, like, have you ever thought of that before? Or are you aware of that when you're playing? Like, it's kind of a stupid question from the outside, but do you think about those things?
Well, you don't really think about it, no, but you figure there are people that idolize you, but then when you realize, it's just regular people, but then when you see that it's like other goalies that are actually in the NHL now, it kind of feels a little bit funny, but it's quite special.
What can we do to get the number one back? Obviously, it's not coming back in Florida, but like, what's the deal? Like, I thought your line on when I asked you way back when why you were number one is one of my favorite things of all time. It's a disappearing trend in the National Hockey
I think
League.
it's a little bit old school, but that's why I liked it. And maybe my little guy is going to be in the league in about 10 years, and he'll bring it back. But I mean, I think the numbers is just different. I think you just look at the number one, and when some goalies have it, I think. When you look at it, to me, when I look at a goalie that has number one, it just feels different for some reason. I don't know why. I can't explain it, but just brings me back to like old school hockey, and that's how I grew up loving the game.
Well, I wear it in beer league because for the same reason, but my teammate suggests I should add a 0 to it to match my goals against average. So it doesn't quite go.
Or after the one.
Definitely after the one. Your son playing?
Yeah.
Last time we talked, he wasn't a goalie yet.
No.
He's transitioning. How is goalie dad life going, and how do you feel about this?
It's actually fun. Before COVID, he was a forward, and I loved watching him play up front and score goals, and cheering him on. And when COVID came, he took a year off hockey because obviously, we didn't want him to play during that time. And that's when he came to me and he said, "Dad, I think I want to make the change." I was like, "Okay, no problem." So we have a little hockey garage set up in my house. And, during COVID, we'd go in there, almost every day and just, shoot pucks on him or balls or whatever it was and work on some things. And, last year was his first year. We played a little rec league and, tested it out for the first time. And this year he's actually in first year travel. So it's been quite a year, and it's been fun. And for me as a dad, watching him in net is a little bit nerve wracking.
I was going to ask, that's different than a forward, eh?
Of course, because now you want him to stop every shot. Like you don't want him to let any in, and when he does let one in, it's heartbreaking, right? And his team isn't very good, so he loses almost every game, but he's facing a lot of rubber, so that's good for him.
Okay, so that actually brings me to the league. Let's bring it to now. And when you watch in your capacity, with the Panthers and as the director of the goaltending excellence department, goals are up, offense is up. I mean, we can tell what's changed. How much harder do you think this is for goaltenders, for young goaltenders, to navigate some of these scores and the fact that games can change so quickly? It's just not as buttoned down defensively as it used to be.
Yeah, exactly. The game's more wide open, right? There's more scoring chances. It's faster. To me, if I put myself in their shoes, that's the time that we play in. So, as long as you're the best goalie in the time that you play in, you don't have to compare yourself to guys 10 years ago. You have to compare yourself to guys in the league now. So that's what you're competing against. And that's how I gauge my performances. Obviously, you're going to let in more goals. Maybe your save percentage is not going to be as good as it was guys 10 years ago, but as long as you're, trying to be better than the guys on the ice that you're competing against every night, that's what matters.
Might it be tougher mentally? Just because it's the swings. There's so many swings in the game. I wonder how hard that might be for some guys to manage the emotional swings that come with, like, we see comebacks like crazy. And, especially as we are seeing more guys get opportunities at younger ages. I mean, you've got one of the best young goalies in the league in Spencer Knight. It just feels like it must be a different type of challenge to manage the emotional swings of the game.
Well, that's what the emotional swings is. The guys that can handle the best are the best goalies in the league. That's just what makes them great, right? Because every goalie can play goal. Like, nowadays, almost everybody plays the same way, So the difference maker is really the mental side for me is guys that can handle those swings, the pressure, all those kind of situations, when things are not going well, who can get out of their little slump the quickest, and all these little things, those are what separates the best, from the rest. And The game itself is I think is in a good place. So goaltending wise, I mean, you're facing more rubber, but at the same time, the games are more exciting. So as long as you can keep your team in the game and you know, bank in the points, I think that's what guys are focused on.
Beyond the fact that there's just more offense, and you know, your coach Paul Maurice was talking about the other day about, you know, it's just the third line isn't grinding anymore. It's full of skill. There aren't a lot of stay-at-home defensemen. But East-West, like the way the game's changed in terms of attack and laterals, how have you seen the goaltending position evolve? I mean, you haven't been out of it that long.
No.
But in the last 5 years, we were running some numbers. The amount of lateral plays below the hash mark have gone up 41%. Like, so as you're watching it and watching goaltending, what type of evolution are you seeing, or what type of evolution do you think needs to happen to keep up with that?
Well, you know, obviously the game always evolves, you know, whether it's on the ice or even as a goaltender. So, you know, if I look at myself when I started my first year to my last, my style is very different, right? Because I evolve with the time, and as goaltenders is the same thing. And even though there are new techniques now, you kind of see guys down a little bit more around the net. You know, back in the day, you try to stand up as much as you can and not go down. But now you kind of see guys staying in the reverse a little bit longer, and you know what I mean, playing out of the reverse more than it was maybe in the last 3 or 4 years. So most of the plays are in tight. It's a good thing to stay low, I think, and react from there. And you know, that's it. I think you need to be a little bit more athletic nowadays to be a good goalie. It's not as cut and paste as it was maybe 10 years ago, where it's, you know, you're butterflying and you're just building a wall in front of the puck every shot. You know, the guys have to rely a little bit more on their athleticism, and I think it's a good thing. You know, it makes it fun. That's why we watch, and makes it more exciting saves.
Is that when you look back on it, is that one of the two things that jump out to me about your career? And I kind of, to be honest, I feel privileged having had the opportunity to follow it here. But the two things that jump out were the consistency and the constant evolution, the willingness to always adapt and never sort of stay still. You think that still holds true for the position? Like, if you're not getting better, you're falling behind if you're not changing?
Yeah, 100%. There's always somebody behind you, pushing you, ready to take your spot. So for me, that's how I approached my whole career. I was never satisfied with my game. I always thought I could get to another level. I was always open to new suggestions. Sometimes they didn't work, right? So not everything's going to work for everybody. But I was open to them, and you try them and see if they work for me. And my game, you know, evolved over the years, and I think that's the key, right? To staying at the top, because things don't stay the same way. Things change all the time, not only in hockey, but in the world. So we have to make sure that we stay on top of that and always evolve with the times.
That I talked about the consistency, and it's probably actually that doesn't do it. That's a disservice to say just consistent. It was consistent excellence. Yeah. Is that something you're proud of? Like, when you look at your career and all you achieved, that there were never big dips for long periods of time.
Yeah, that's probably the thing I'm most proud of. You know, I wish I could say it was a Stanley Cup, but I don't have one. But
well, we're about 70 feet away right now from a gold medal that I remember you celebrating.
Well,
so there were some highlights.
Yeah, there was. But you know, I think the consistency is something that is the thing that I worked on the most, right? And it's not only during the season, but it's in the off season. It's continuously always trying to be better, continuously trying to stay in shape, and everything you need to do to be at your best. So to do it for so long, I think it's something that's very difficult, and something that I actually am very proud of.
Who do you enjoy watching now? Again, it feels like I'm talking about like the old days. Like, you know, like you haven't been retired that long, but like, are there goalies that as this game changes, and obviously you've got your guys and you're watching your guys closely, but when you look around the league, when you're traveling, are there guys that jump out that you just love to watch play?
There's a lot. I mean, the first one is Vaseline, obviously. You know, we see him a ton in Florida. So, and he's just, when he's on top of his game, he's literally unbeatable. Like, you cannot beat him. And it's rare that you find that, right?
What is it about his game? Like is it just
he's just a freak. He's got a natural athleticism, size, mentally he's strong. Technically he's like, he doesn't have anything negative in his game. Like, there's anything you can think of it's elite. So no flaws at all. And you know, he wants to be on the ice every day. He doesn't take days off. You know what I mean? Like a lot of
reminds me of you a little bit that
that's
way.
what I was gonna say. A lot of nowadays it's all about managing your workload, blah blah blah. But this kid, and I talking to his goalie coach in Tampa, he wants to be on the ice every day. He wants to play every game. Like that's crazy, and he's durable. Like he plays, and and he's one of the best goalies every year.
I mean, I guess maybe this year he came out of one game, but like 3 straight runs to the final, and he played every minute up until that one instant. Like the first 2 cups, he never came out.
No, exactly.
Remarkable. Your guy, Spencer, actually told me this summer that he sees that as something like he wants to be a guy that, would, I don't know if it would ever happen in today's NHL, but he's like, why can't you play 79 like Grant Fuhr, like play 75 like Roberto used to do?
Well, if there's one guy that could do it, I would say it's Spencer. Just because he's so in tune with his body. He really takes care of his body. He works hard. He eats clean. He's always like, so I think he's got the type of physique makeup that he could handle the workload. And he wants to play. He just wants to play. That's his, he's kind of an easy go lucky guy. He's like, I just want to play games. And if you say to him you'll play 80 games this year, he'd be like, yeah, sure, no problem. And so all that combined, I think he's the type of guy that could actually take on that kind of workload.
Why do you think we've seen the trend towards tandems?
Yeah,
I mean, we don't see, it's a pretty short list of guys who are sort of workhorses anymore. Is that just a function of, like you said, like the need for rest and load management and all those types of trends, or is the gap between, there used to be a bit of a gap, right, between starter and backup. Is there more sort of quality in the league and the gap shrinking?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. I mean, there's a lot of teams. I mean, you don't really see like clear-cut starting goalies anymore. I mean, there's maybe a handful of teams that have one. The rest are all guys that have either a young guy pushing or like 1A, 1B. Like there's no gap anymore. And everybody's fighting for their jobs, whether it's the goalies, the coaches, and they need to win games. Sometimes, like the gap is so small that, whoever's playing better or hotter at that moment, the coach is going to ride that person. And that's the way the game is now. And it kind of started when I was here with Corey Schneider. I mean, that's kind of where it started, where he was pushing me for starts. And then, little by little, he was taking more net. And it got to the point where we were almost splitting at one time. And then eventually, obviously, took over. But so I think some of the starters have to kind of change their mindset a little bit on that. We're still in some guys are in the mindset, hey, I need to play 65, 70 games and blah, blah, blah. But nowadays it's like, you have to realize that there's 2 guys that can play, and, there'll be stretches where you'll be playing more and probably other stretches where the other guys will be playing more.
And that, like, is that a mindset shift too? Like we see it now, it's happening. But you're right. Like, I don't know that I ask every guy if they're cool with it. Right. Like I look at Swayman and Allmark and their goalie hub, but like that type of relationship. And I think I love the way you and Corey handled it here, despite a lot of outside attention on a quote unquote controversy. It was never that way inside.
No, obviously we both wanted to play.
Right.
We both wanted to play. There's no doubt. But at the end of the day, it's not about Roberto Luongo or Corey Schneider. At the end of the day, it's about the Vancouver Canucks and what is going to make the team better in the long run. And we have to guys got to get in that mindset, because, it's easy to be selfish in those situations. And, maybe you're upset or you're in a negative and it affects the room, and that kind of stuff. We can't have that anymore. And guys have to understand that the game is changing. We got to realize that, maybe you're not going to play as many games. Maybe you'll split 50-50, whatever it is. At the end of the day, load management, there's all these things that go into it now that, guys have to realize that it's all about the team first.
Okay. So Spencer, you talked about it, like, eats clean, he just seems to have a mental approach that, especially with young goalies, the wild swings that come, we talk about the emotional swings. I feel like every time I talk to him, that's not going to be a problem if he ever goes through that. Like, he just seems so grounded.
Yep.
Are we back to like just normal now? Like,
goalies are normal?
Yeah.
Have they ever been normal?
Well, but that's the thing. Like, I kind of feel like it disappeared. Like, is the weird goalie thing gone? The strange goalie thing?
I don't think so.
No, it's still around.
Guys still have their quirks here and there in a different way. Everybody's different in their own way.
Okay, so what were some of the craziest quirks I shouldn't use the word crazy because that's a negative connotation, but what were some of the oddest quirks that you saw, especially starting out? Like, how far have we come?
Like my own, or
you can go your own or anywhere.
I was gonna say I was the only normal goalie to ever exist, so
so you're good.
Yeah,
but I mean, I'll be look for this. when you watch the Canucks, although
Yeah.
he's not starting tonight, Spencer Martin rubs Vaseline on his pads.
Yeah.
So we still have some of this.
Yeah, we do. I mean,
do you remember any, like, what were some of the more different
just
things?
guys have certain superstitions or routines that are really like outrageous a little bit, and I can't think of one in particular, but even if you watch night or play tonight, he has certain things that he does on the ice, that are not necessary, but that's part of his routine and a little quirkiness. And guys have their own thing, whatever makes them feel good. I mean, obviously, I think sometimes it's over the top, but you have to be able to have a little bit of that without going overboard.
Walks around Stanley Park during the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Well, that was for her mental side of that's normal.
That's there you go. And so, and that's, I guess that's what, like, there's been this trend towards sort of getting away from that old stuff. So I was curious what you thought about it.
I think it's still around. I mean, from what I've seen, I obviously don't.
It is just more routine.
Yeah, it's more of a routine. But,
some of them are just unique.
And exactly, and that's the thing, right? There's a fine line between routine and then
superstition.
Yeah, superstition, and it's all right to be a little bit superstitious, because we all had our little things, But at the end of the day, we have to make sure that doesn't control us.
Right. So you don't get overwhelmed by it.
Exactly.
Last one. Now here you are in the Hockey Hall of Fame. If Hockey Hall of Fame Roberto Luongo could go back to rookie Roberto Luongo and give him one piece of advice, what would it be?
Just relax and have more fun. I especially earlier on in my career, I was very serious and very focused on what I had to do, which is not bad. But at the same time, I wish I would have just enjoyed it a little bit more as I evolved into the person I became.
I said last one, but Flower, like, do you?
Yes,
like
I wish
that,
I was
is that the perfect example of it? Like, that's so key to him.
Yeah,
he has fun.
That's the best example, and you could see it, right? And not just in practice, but in games, he's always, and that's the greatest example you can give is a guy like that you're just enjoying the game every time he's out there.
Well, we always enjoy talking to you, Roberto. Thank you so much, like I said, for making us your exception on the podcast rule. Means a lot to us here at InGoal Mag, and I know to the goalie union that listens to this as well.
My pleasure.
Woody, you know Lou better than us. What's it like every chance you get a chance to speak with him?
Oh, that's a good question. Like I said, it was a pretty big honor for him to do our podcast just because he doesn't do any other podcasts. I still have that sense around him. Like, there's just sort of like he's a Hall of Famer. He's one of the greatest of all time, right? Like, and so, but it's not awe because I was around him daily for almost 8 years here with the Vancouver Canucks. And that's where that relationship was built, even though it actually started. Like, I look over in the corner of my office and the first ever episode of Goalie News, which was my first time sort of trying to write about goalies and learn about goalies, was Roberto Luongo on the cover. The magazine that Ian Clark started, which sort of started this whole journey for me. And that was with Roberto in Florida. So that relationship actually predated his trade here. We would touch base once a year for that magazine. So yeah, like you're not in awe because you've known him for a long time, but I still very much, like, it means a lot to me that he takes the time and makes the time for me and for us. So you still are very, like I said, honored, I guess is the right word. Honored without being awestruck, because once we just start talking goalies, it's just a conversation, right? And so, when Hockey Canada had him on, I think it was 2 summers ago during the pandemic to, do a Q&A with a bunch of the kids, I think from the Program of Excellence. It may have been actually during one of the summer camps. I moderated that, right? Because there's that back and forth and that relationship that we have that made that an easy task because it just becomes a conversation, right? Like, it's, I guess, in a very poor way, as I ramble on and on, I would sum it up with our first interview. Every time I see him, for all the things he's done and all the things he's achieved in his career, it's just me and him driving in the car talking about goaltending. And that's pretty cool. Like, for me, that's pretty cool. That's one of the biggest honors I think you could get, is that it's just 2 guys talking about goaltending and the back and forth. it's not just all one way. It's pretty fun. It's pretty cool. I'm fanboying.
Yeah, no, there's no issue with that at all when you're talking about a Hall of Famer who happens to be a pretty good friend. Hutch, just a comment from you about Roberto Luongo, the goaltender through the career and now a Hall of Famer.
Wow, he's been a consistent presence for us, not just through 200 episodes of a podcast, Darren, but through 12 years now of InGoal magazine. Different incarnations, but he was a huge presence right from the beginning. In fact, I know we've told this story a couple of times over the years, but the origin of sort of the current InGoal was when Kevin and I connected during the 2010 Olympics. And the very first story that Kevin sent me was about Roberto Luongo and a particular save that he'd made that wouldn't have been made without a gear change mandated by the IIHF, and sort of the goalie geek stuff that we just love to get into. And so he's been there right from the beginning for us, and it's been an important part of our evolution, and very thankful for that. The pro return gear of his that came through the offices for testing. You might even see a pad over Kevin's shoulder there. And then he's just been an incredible goaltender, and maybe guys, just a little bit of a source of jealousy for me, because I find out about these exchanges between Woody and Roberto, and I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him yet. So, but yeah, really thankful for that. And then as a fan here in British Columbia, a fan of the Canucks for many years, his ability as a goaltender, the way that he put the franchise on his shoulders and carried them, was something that's just been a real pleasure to watch. And I'm sure it's going to be interesting to see the next evolution of his career as an executive too. I'm looking forward to that as well.
Woody, you got us beat, and we're happy about that because we get to lean on you and hear about these interactions with Roberto Luongo. So thank you for being so transparent and sharing so much with us.
Hey, the other thing you talked about, evolution, that to me was the best part of Roberto's career. The evolution. Never stop trying to get better. I can't recall how many stories I wrote over the years about a new technique that, at a time when a lot of guys were rested on their laurels, he was always looking for something new. The reverse UEH was a big one for him as a guy who, struggled at times to hold that lower pad above the goal line in a traditional VH, and teams were targeting. And as soon as it was suggested to him that he check it out, he tracks down Ian Clark in the summer in Florida, where Ian was summering, not working with the Canucks at the time, and reps out RVH and learns RVH and brings it back to the Canucks. And their goalie coach at the time, Rolly Melanson, is like, this is how I'm doing it now. Like, let's work on this. So that constant evolution that I think defines the position, he embraced it. And I think the best do. That's why they have careers as long and as successful as he did. And was an honor, like I said, honored to sort of have that window into those changes and those elements while he was here in Vancouver. And again, even before in Florida and after he went back to Florida. So there's been, you know what, guys, as we sort of start to wrap up 200, I got to share, I had another cool moment that just made me appreciate you guys and everything we get to do here. There's times where it is a struggle to find a time of the day where the three of us can get together. There's been times where it's been a real struggle to get a guest every week for 200 weeks, as we strive to bring you some of the biggest names and some of the best stories in the position. And there are times where you wonder, like, man, is this worth it? Like, it can be a grind. And then last night in the press box, Colorado Avalanche in town to play the Vancouver Canucks. Pavel Francouz is coming back off an injury, so he's with the team. They're running 3 goalies. He was out there with Jussi Parkkila, doing some work after, but didn't play. So I ran into him in the press box, and for whatever reason, we'd never been introduced, because every time Colorado came, either it was on a back end of a back-to-back and there was no access, or he wasn't playing, or he was injured. Obviously, he's gone through a couple of big injuries the past couple of years. And so I just wanted to introduce myself to him, because I'm always been a fan of his game. We've talked about before how, like, as he was coming up with Colorado, I know there were other teams that liked his game, and I thought he was such a good bargain deal for the Avs, and every time they needed him, he's played so well. And I just wanted to say hi. And the first thing he says to me, he says, I recognize the voice. I was like, kind of caught off guard. He's like, from the podcast, I listen. And so moments like that, amidst all the grind it can feel like at times, reminded me how cool this is to get to be a part of this with you guys. So I wanted to make sure it was just a total coincidence that happened the night before we recorded the intros for episode 200. But it really put a lot of things in perspective for me. And it's something I'm going to try to hold on to and remember, the next time a guest can't make it at the last minute and we're left scrambling. The good news too is Pavel's going to come on the show sometime in the near future, so we'll have another guest to include. So, and it ties into Sense Arena, who's been here for the last couple of years, been a big part of the show, because Pavel obviously is from Czech Republic, and I believe is one of the goalies that uses Sense Arena. So it all kind of tied together for me perfectly last night, and it was a fun moment.
Sense Arena VR, the Hockey Shop, a source for sports Surrey, thehockeyshop.com. Thank you so much for this. And to Pavel, we can't wait to hear the conversation about goaltending from your perspective. Awesome stuff. Kevin and David, great ride at 200 more. We'll see what happens, because it is a situation where there's so many stories to tell that we can have no lack of angles, no pun intended, to cover this, and to our listeners as well. Appreciate it. More people joining on board every week as we go down this journey in the wide world of goaltending. We'll talk to you next week on InGoal Radio, the podcast.